Welcome to Laugh, Cry, IEP, the podcast for moms with neurodivergent kids by Victoria Crisp. Victoria is a special education consultant and advocate with 20 years of experience on the school side and 5 additional years on your side. This is your journey, but you are not alone. Here, you'll learn, you'll be understood, and you'll find community. In fact, we'd love to have you join us in the Laugh Cry IEP community on Facebook. We'll tell you how at the end. Now, here's your host, Victoria Crisp.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Victoria.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be talking to you today. This is one of the most interesting cases that I've worked on in the past couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very interesting case.
And not to be a spoiler alert, but things are going extremely well.
They are going extremely well, actually.
So, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
This has an awesome outcome.
Yeah.
But it was we weren't sure what was going to happen.
I'm gonna make myself cry already.
It's okay. I mean, literally, I'm crying on some of these. My guests are crying on them. So, that's a totally normal thing, apparently, with this podcast.
Yeah, it was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. It was heart-wrenching.
It was. It is. Yeah, it's heart-wrenching. Just for you and whomever is listening, in case you haven't listened to any of the other episodes, the whole purpose of me recording these podcasts is because I have these super important conversations with parents, but those are one-on-one conversations. And every time I would have these really kind of deep dive, heavy, emotional conversations with parents, they would be so upset. And I always wanted everybody else to know that you are not alone. I do this for a living. I talk to so many families a week who are so upset and also feel super isolated. So what would it be like if I were able to kind of record some of these conversations, even though they're not happening in real time, where we're going back and telling everybody the story about what happened, but at least people who are going through this and parents who are going through this can hear these stories and understand that their feelings are normal. This happens to a lot of families, a lot of kids. There's tons of similarities. And that's the whole reason we're doing this.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. So how do you think we should start? I think sometimes it's easier to attempt to tell the story chronologically with, some side roads along the way. But does that make sense for you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Awesome. So.
I know. Where do we begin? It's a lot. So.
You had started working on this a little bit, and then at some point you were like, I think I need help.
Yeah. So, as you know, I'm a teacher. So I kind of know what to do, but I'm not really aggressive. I'm a little bit of a pushover. So there's where I need your help.
So you were talking to some friends of yours about what's happening, and somebody was like,
Yeah,
you should call I've heard about
Yeah.
this lady. I was just trying to think of how we started working together, because
Oh,
I think
yeah.
also for parents are they're like, I don't know when to call somebody. Is my problem big enough? How do I find somebody?
Yeah, I'm too much of a pushover. I'm too nice. As I said, I'm a teacher. I work with children with special needs. I know all the rules. I can't really advocate for myself. And so one of my fellow teachers said, to another teacher who's the guidance counselor who heads all the special needs meetings, and you actually advocate against us in our district. And she said, oh, who's that really hard advocate? Who's that one? You actually kind of have a tough reputation
As
in
it
our
should be.
town. Yeah. And she said, Victoria.
If it's tough, that means I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't feel bad about that.
No, they're afraid of you.
See, but then they were like, but she did a good job and we'll refer you to her.
No, that's a good reputation.
I guess in this line of work, I guess it is. Okay, so they were like, you should call Victoria, and then you just found me and got in touch.
But just backtracking, you know, typically we kind of laugh at advocates. They're usually moms, who have children with special needs. They kind of know little about the law. They know maybe kind of specific to their child. They don't really have a lot of experience. They just have experience with their children. That's not you. You are like, I mean, you're like getting a lawyer, really. I mean, it's like,
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer, so I just want to say
yeah,
that. But I think
yeah,
that because I'm like hiring your own special ed director.
yeah. It is
Like
really
the
like,
school has a special ed director,
mhm,
and then I think parents should have one too.
right. And I don't know if we should jump that far, but you went toe to toe with the special ed director.
I always
Yeah.
do.
Yes. And he regretted it. And he
Well, I
retired.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he retired.
Then he retired.
He was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna retire. No, I'm just kidding. Okay,
Yeah.
so you called me and you were like, here's what's been going on.
So my daughter had been having a a slight tick, like a head nod. Her head was shaken to the side. It started with an eye twitch, then a head nod. Then it eventually progressed. She was screaming Aflac, Aflac, Aflac. Um, she's reporting to me that boys are coming up to her in the hallway and throwing punches, not making contact, but throwing punches at her to get her to scream. And that's
Trying
what
to
made,
invoke the ticks.
yeah, and that's what made the progression from the eye blink to the screaming. So I'm either me or my husband are calling the school, and the principal said, "Oh, we checked. It's not directed at her. It's just a game. It's just a game they play, and that's it. That's all we got.
Yeah, that's a
Nothing more."
nice game. That's a nice
Yeah,
game to be
yeah.
playing. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. I was
so
like, oh, really? Where are
yeah,
they? Okay.
and that's it. That's the end of it. You know. So I mean, she's in pain. Her grades are declining. This is a kid who, um, from her MCAS scores, she got admitted to a Saturday classes at an advanced study school. And all of a sudden her grades are declining. She's in a room by herself. None of her friends are calling her all of a sudden. Something's going on. And, we're calling the school, as I said, and no, nothing, nothing's going on.
Nothing to report here.
Yeah. So,
You're like, do you have any incident reports? No. Incidents of
yeah.
what? I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? What?
Yeah. So,
That's always my first. I'm always like, wait, what? Seriously?
so you asked for the incident reports, asked and asked and asked. Nope, stalling. No incident reports.
There were no incidents. So why
No.
would there be any reports?
Right.
Right?
So, right. But she had told me things happen, this person did this, that person did that. They just kept stalling. Nothing,
And she
nothing,
was
nothing, nothing.
believable. And they
Right,
were the school wasn't like, no, she's lying. They were
right.
like, oh, well, we don't
Yeah,
know, or she didn't tell us, or we didn't really hear anything. Things seem okay. Just basically
yeah,
like trying to minimize it. And it was hard
right.
for us to decipher, but why don't they know? And then, at a certain point, you're like, okay, maybe they could have missed like 3, but you're not missing 30 incidents.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, when I look back, I'm kind of mad I wasn't more aggressive about it, but
We
it,
were fairly aggressive.
I mean, myself,
Oh, well,
without you, in absence of you, but I'm a teacher.
I think it gets overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, and my job is overwhelming. I work with kids with special needs. I'm exhausted, and
And if you say it so many
just
times, you think, all right, I'm the only one that thinks this is a problem.
right.
So, what else do I have to do or say for somebody to hear me?
Yeah, right.
And then you're like,
So
I guess, all right, fine. And then something else happens. You're like, wait, we're doing this again?
yeah,
And I think that's where parents get like, they're like, I don't even know anymore.
yeah. I'm
Because
questioning
if this
myself.
was serious, wouldn't they be acting like it was serious?
Right. And the school system we're in is 50th in the state. So very, very high academic achieving school. That's why we moved here. So you'd think a school that high would, you know,
Yeah, and she's in the middle school. She
right,
was in the middle school. Yeah. Okay.
right.
All right. So she's a good kid, has these
Mm.
tics. Then there's some like really inappropriate peer interactions to the
Mhm.
point where her peers are, some of them, a small number of them, are trying to do things to her to cause the tics so that then everyone can like laugh about it, which is
Mhm.
a horrific kind of bullying. Um, then what happened?
Um, well then she's reporting her friend, one of her best friends, um, is telling her to go kill herself. And she actually, it was big for her to tell us this. She finally came out and said this. She actually had held things in for a long time, and she finally said it. You know, she's held it in for years. And then her whole friend group that she'd had since we moved here went against her and made up this huge story that she lied. So now the whole group was against her, and essentially the whole school, because this kid was very popular. So
Yeah.
now she's totally ostracized. You know, the whole school's against her. And then this friend would whisper for her to kill herself again, you know. And then another friend in the group, I heard her, called her, and, you know, actually backtracking, I heard the other friend say it to her. So I know it happened. Um, anyways, and then another friend called her and reamed her out that she was lying, and you know, so now she's ostracized from the whole friend group that she'd been in her whole life, which was so important to her. She's really social, and friends was really important to her. So now she's identifying with another group, and all of a sudden she's dressing different. She's dressing more goth, and all of a sudden she's dressing like a boy, and all of a sudden she's identifying as a boy, and then she again starts, I think to protect herself, but
Well, okay, so let's break that down a little bit more. So if I remember correctly, she was also wearing like much larger clothes, darker
yeah,
colors, things
right,
like big sweatshirts, hooded things.
right,
So I think
yeah,
that like sometimes that literally physically becomes a way
hmm
for them to hide within their clothes,
right, exactly,
right? To protect yourself, especially when there's such a drastic, quick difference from
right,
like one way of dressing and then
mhm,
literally just a short time, a
right,
whole different like big jeans, big sweatshirts, big t-shirts,
yeah,
hooded sweatshirts, like enormous clothes
yeah.
to
And
hide inside.
if you had known her, I mean, this girl from day one was pink, 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 babies, baby, babies. You know, it just wasn't her. You know, it, it's not that that wasn't okay to me. It just wasn't her. You know, it was something was off. In hindsight, I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead, but well, one of her friends had been beating her up in school since pretty much all of elementary school. And again, I might be jumping too far ahead in the storyline, but reflecting, there was one day she came home and she cried for 4 hours, screaming so loud you could hear her. Sorry, I'm getting sad again.
It's okay.
Sorry. I just regret that day so much. She was crying so loud, you know, we had to put her in the tub. And she cried and cried and cried, and we couldn't get her to tell us what happened. And you know, and that was the first time the girl had punched her. It turned out like I think there was like an incident. I think she finally stood up for herself in the lunchroom, you know. And I think that was like the final break, and her friends all separated. You know, I think she might have like yelled at the friend in the lunchroom, and then all of a sudden everybody thinks she's a crazy person, you know. And then
These are bullying incidents that were traumatizing to
right,
her and honestly to your whole family.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, cried so bad we had to put her in the tub. And so that day she went to a teacher. I think it might have been a lunch matron, and told her, "Oh, so and so punched me." And she said, "Oh, she would never do that." So she said later she went to the principal and said, "So and so hit me." And she just, yeah, this isn't going to come out on audio, but she just shook her head and said, "Okay." And just, that was it.
Nobody believes me.
Right. And I think
I'm
my daughter's a little dramatic, or was. She's not now because she lost all that, but because of that. And nobody listened to her. So that day she held it in, and that's when she came home and cried, and she didn't tell us because nobody was going to listen to her. So she held that in.
Yeah.
I
So when we met, I'm sorry, she was in 6th or 7th.
think she was in eighth. I can't remember.
Okay. It was like
It's
mid-year.
all a blur.
It was like January.
Yeah, it was
We
in
started working together.
January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's going to be a bunch of issues that pop out in the story. So this is the bullying.
Right.
So we started working together. I start working with the school, and I give you the speech that I give every parent and every principal. I want every single incident report. I want investigations for every single incident. And I want all of the documentation for that. And every time something new happens, we want to be notified immediately. And they didn't do it.
Right.
Which speeds up the process for us if you're advocating in the right way, because it's just like more evidence that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the state has long said to school districts, you can come up with your own bullying policy, but you have to follow it. And that's one of the ways that they went wrong, right? And this was so bad that this is like incident after incident after incident after I'd already been involved. So we filed a complaint with the state just on the bullying issues.
Right.
And do you remember what the outcome of that was?
We won. It was, yeah. They found that they violated her civil rights. They had, well, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, but
so it was a corrective action. They were found
yeah.
that they needed to take corrective action, and they had to write a corrective action plan. The school district.
And well, this is how I tell it.
Yeah, go for it.
So the whole city had to rewrite their civil rights laws. They had to retrain every teacher in the whole city. They had to rewrite, as I said, their civil rights laws, and they had to repost them in every school. We'll take it from there. That's the crux of it. But
so, this is a really great example of how advocacy for one child can impact all of the children in the district. You almost never get
right.
To be able to impact a district on that level, but we made some major change in this school district.
Right. And awesome. I keep saying all you had to do was acknowledge what happened. It didn't have to go that far.
But also, good that they didn't, because now they're gonna.
Right. Yeah.
Now they're gonna. So
yeah. Hopefully it won't happen to someone else,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've done so much for all of the children that come behind her, which is a big deal. I think it's a big deal, right?
Sorry. Get choked up again. Thank you.
I know. It's moving.
Right.
Okay. We're doing all the bullying stuff, and we don't know the outcome of that at this point. And then we go into some IEP meetings.
Right.
And the IEP meetings are just like,
I have never, as I said, I'm a teacher and I teach children with special needs. I've never seen such a disorganized IEP meeting. It's like, okay, what do you want to talk about?
Like, then they're like, we're not talking about anything from the past. I'm like, what?
Right. I know. It's like,
what?
I know.
Like yesterday, we can't talk about yesterday.
I know. And then when you conversations, typically you interject your thoughts, and when the head of the special needs department kept saying, "Excuse me, I'm talking," when you try to interject.
He kept telling me to stop talking.
I know. It was like, it's not like you were being rude. You're just having a typical
No,
conversation.
I wasn't allowed to speak
Yeah,
or talk
right,
about anything from the
right,
past, which is
right.
like, I'm like, what? I know.
I know.
They're just trying to get out of having a conversation about the
Right.
fact that there's a big problem here.
I know. And they kept saying to me, "Oh, Mrs. Norwood, you're welcome to stay after and talk to us." Like, oh, okay.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
mm-mm,
I know.
no,
Okay.
we're definitely not doing
Right.
that.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. And they kept sending me emails. Oh, almost condescendingly. I wish you'd just talk to us, Mrs. Norwood.
Yeah.
I would talk to you before this whole thing happened. You didn't seem to talk to me before. Now you want to talk to me?
Oh, you want to talk offline,
Yeah,
privately, on the phone without my advocate present? I don't think
right,
so.
right. Yeah, yeah, very sneaky. So,
Yeah, it's too late for that. In my instructions, I'm like, parents are like, well, maybe. I'm like, no, no, no. Mm-mm.
yeah, no. So, yeah, now I don't do anything without you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's another interesting thing, right?
Mhm.
And that
Yep.
is it pans and pandas?
So the two are kind of interchangeable. It's just so it's the
Gotcha.
inflammation of the brain.
And
And
it is something that is relatively new to many, many people.
right.
And it is, I think, something, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but
Mhm.
I would say my opinion of it, I mean, I heard about this first in kids with like extreme behavioral disorders, that they thought there was something that was coming from strep throat, having
Yeah.
had strep throat was causing this enormous emotional disruption like years later. And people were like, I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah.
And I think it's gained more notoriety. People know that it's real, or many people know and believe that it's real. There are some naysayers, I think, still, and I think that's maybe a lack of knowing about it, because it's newer and because there's like a handful of specialists in the world. And
Mhm.
so it's hard to tell sometimes where these, because with such an array of symptoms, what could be causing it. So it can take a long time to get a diagnosis
Right.
and then a
Actually,
treatment plan in place.
so the top hospital in the country essentially is near us. And although they say they treat it at their hospital, they don't. So that's where, she started to have what looked like a grand mal seizure. We brought her in there. Literally, she's thrashing her head back and forth like a grand mal seizure. We rush her in and we sat there for 8 hours. People came in after us. They were seen, they left before us, they and so, like I said, they have on their website, they believe in it, they treat it, but they don't. You know, they said eventually when we were seen 8 hours later by the neurologist, and they said, "Oh, we'll meet with our team."
So, can you tell me a little bit about what led you down the road to investigate, what was happening with her? Because I think you went to a lot of doctors. I think she had some neuropsych testing. She saw a variety of people before you were able to come to this conclusion.
Right. So, as I said, we didn't get any answers, but we're not just gonna leave it at that. Oh, your child's having what looks like a grand mal seizure. Oh, see you later. We don't know what it is, you know. Um,
Right, right.
and I didn't mention this, but her pediatrician, we went to him and um, he drew a lot of nice pictures on his the table paper, a lot of nice cartoon pictures and then later he went in with my husband went in to see him and he patted him on the shoulder and he told him, "Get used to it, man. I have a daughter who's deaf and this is how she's gonna be. And this is how Emily's gonna be for the rest of your life and you're just gonna have to get used to it." And
But you're like, get used to what? Like,
Yeah.
what? We still don't
Yeah.
know what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, don't look anymore. That's how she's gonna be. Okay. And that was the last time we saw him. And so my husband had to hold back his emotions.
Yeah,
And
very frustrating,
right.
obviously.
I mean, just don't investigate, just accept it. I don't understand the medical community sometimes. And
Yeah.
I did a little research before I came on with you, and it said that 1 in 200 children are estimated to have PANS and PANDAS, and it strikes me as very similar to the autism number when it first came out, which is rising every day. And it said 70% of children with autism have PANS and PANDAS. So it's just like a rising epidemic, like everything. Why aren't we acknowledging it? So
And
mainstream.
sometimes sometimes it's dormant, right? And like you might not ever
Yes.
know you had it. And then other
Yes.
times you could have, anywhere mild, moderate to severe symptoms.
Right. And the thing that makes it dormant, not dormant to my understanding, or the thing that makes it severe in my daughter's case is the trauma. The trauma is what brought it out. And, some kids might have mild cases of it and the trauma is removed. So the trauma that my daughter went through is what brought it out. Um, we also, digressing a little, we had mold. She had mold in her system from the rugs. We had the rugs ripped up. But it didn't affect anybody else in the house, right? So,
Right.
why didn't it affect anybody else?
Right.
So,
But this was really a mystery. And I think that you probably bumped into a lot of people that were like, nah, it's not that.
right,
But you were
right,
just like, we have to figure this out. Like,
right,
we are going to figure this out. We're going to do whatever it takes because we want
right,
her to get better.
right. And I think a lot of people don't have the psychological and the financial means to do it. I mean, I'm kind of like I can't give up. I killed myself. I sat home every day after work and I researched 24 hours a day. I got on. I refer to it as PANS, but it's PANS and PANDAS. But because she had PANS, I say PANS, but it's
That's
really
okay.
both.
Yeah.
But I got on all these Facebook sites and I just researched 24/7 all the time. I kind of drove myself crazy. My husband and I, who were like the most docile people you ever met, we almost got a divorce. I mean, it was so hard.
Oh my God. I didn't
We,
know that.
yeah, it was so hard. I mean, we just, we just recoiled in pain. It was so hard. Ugh, we're gonna cry again. Sorry. I mean, we just held it in because that's how we are. I don't talk about my pain, and he doesn't either. So we were just in pain, and we didn't really have anybody. Nobody really understood our pain.
It's
We
isolating while you're going through it.
It's isolating. We don't really have family near us. We didn't have anybody to help us. Um, it just completely ripped us apart. And, I'd go in my room at times and I'd cry so loudly you could hear me downstairs for like 3 hours at a time. And then my son, who's a year older than her, I remember like watching what it did to him, and I feel so bad. I think because him and I are really close, and I think it kind of wrecked him a little bit, and I feel so bad about that too. And him and her were really close. They're only 13 months apart. They were like almost like twins.
Yeah.
And what the Pans did to her, it made her a little bit crazy, and so he pulled away from her, and they're a little bit separated now because of that. And he's left behind. Now we put all this energy into her, and now he's just left behind. She couldn't do dishes because she'd have a tick, and she literally was whipping dishes at my husband's head when she'd have a tick, so she doesn't have to do dishes. Well, now
Right.
my son does all the dishes, and now he's mad, well, she doesn't have to do dishes because she's going through all of this, and now he resents her,
Yeah.
things like that are hard. I don't know,
They're super hard. They're super hard. And I think this is like, again, like what goes on behind closed doors in families when you're dealing with these kind of crises, when
right,
your kids are in crisis. It's
right,
not just a small isolated thing. It affects your whole entire life.
right. It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. So eventually there started to be some folks you are resonating with and you're on starting to be on the right path.
well, so the way we found out about it, my best friend from childhood, her two nieces actually have pandas. So my best friend's sister-in-law, so her brother's wife, um, they've actually dated since they were like 19 or 20. So I've known her since then. I'm almost 50 now, so she's like a sister to me. Um, so she told me immediately what it was, She said she thought it was pandas. It's pandas, I'm telling you. This is it. She told me who to see. The doctors literally like backtracking, I saw a naturopath before that. She found the mold. I don't know if she diagnosed the pants, but we paid out of pocket. I think it was $5,000 or $10,000 out of pocket. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's, because doctors don't recognize it. So,
Sure.
that's what we're doing. We had to rip up all the rugs, so we refinanced the house, $30,000 later. And so then going forward, we went to this guy and then we found the pants and I call him Jesus. He's literally like he's the kindest man you'll ever meet. He works for this prestigious hospital and the hospitals around here are the best hospitals in the country. But he's literally like the only guy in the country in this side of the country who does it. So because it's not really recognized. So and he does children 2 days a week and adults 2 days a week. And the receptionist 2 days a week. So for that reason, it's very hard to get an appointment with him.
Sure.
So, you face that challenge. He put her on antibiotics and she immediately responded.
Amazing. Like
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, like her ticks almost instantly calmed down. She just had an immediate response. I mean, there were hiccups along the road, but that was the beginning.
Okay, so she's making good progress on the antibiotics. Then what happened?
So that doctor who I mentioned put in an order for her for something called IVIG. That's a immunoglobulin, it's hard to say, treatment that they use for people with autoimmune diseases. So in our state, our governor, right before he went out of office, signed it into law that it would be covered, but it's not covered in every state. So I know someone in New York who did it and they paid out of pocket for it, $10,000 a treatment. So, and
Wild. Is this the one she gets by IV?
yeah, it's called IVIG and it's used to reduce the effects of autoimmune diseases and it's sorry. I can't really describe it that well, but it's
That's okay. You don't have to.
okay.
But it's been successful and she gets what's the treatment schedule?
She does it 2 times in a row every 6 to 7 weeks, and she got 16 treatments. So
And
she
it's
got
like an infusion over several hours.
yeah, 8 hours at a time. So
And they do it at your house?
yeah, private nurse comes to the house. So the $10,000 doesn't even include the nurse. So it's like $10,000 for 2 days, so $20,000 each day. Doesn't even include the nurse. I mean, it's huge. And it was uh, it's hard to like get that. We kind of actually had to push for it. I mean, this whole thing is huge and she feels like $1 million after it. And you can see like the progression as as the 6 to 7 week mark comes up, you can
It's
see
like
that,
wearing off.
yeah, you can see her symptoms kind of start to come back, and
Yeah.
So
and just to be clear, sorry, you were able to get it covered because you're in Massachusetts.
we were, but because of this doctor, a lot of people aren't. He told me once previously to when this was signed into law, he wrote a 13-page, I don't know how to describe it, but a 13-page proposal to the insurance company to have somebody covered for it. That's
Right.
how great this guy is.
Yeah.
I mean, we just
Yeah,
have a
he
lot.
cares a lot. I mean, it's a big deal to like almost cure somebody of these huge symptoms.
Right. And there's a lot of people out there that have this that don't know they have this. And there's just not a lot of awareness of it. And there's a lot of overlap between the autism community and the PANS and the PANDAS community.
All right, let's jump back into school stuff.
Okay.
So we're at these IEP meetings and we go to a few of them. We have communication in between. We're still tracking the bullying incidents. And eventually we're really just not getting anywhere.
No, right.
So I thought it was maybe time to file for mediation.
Oh, right. Yes. I forgot about that.
So much to the story.
I know.
So do you want to share what like that experience was like for you?
That experience, oh, was funny. So we're preparing for the mediation, you know, and you're telling me, and others are telling me, because I work in special ed, and you say, oh, mediation can be from 6 to 7 hours, that we get there, it's like 20 minutes. And they're like, okay, that's my memory of it. But they're like,
No, and it's
yeah,
confidential, so we can't tell you any details. But
okay. But,
it was,
yeah,
I think that mediation is an awesome, awesome option.
yeah.
So I guess we can't even. I was
Okay,
hoping to talk more about that, and then it just occurred
okay,
to me that it's confidential. But
okay.
yeah, so I mean, but it was a positive experience.
Um, yeah,
I think we had a great outcome. We were very pleased.
yeah. Actually, that went very well. The whole thing was actually very positive.
Yeah. The
And
mediation, I always highly recommend mediation to everybody. I've had really, really great, really positive experiences. I think the mediators do a fabulous job.
yeah, the
And it's a
mediator,
tough job.
yeah.
Good experience. Okay. So at some point we agreed with the district
Mhm,
that the public school, the district middle school was
mhm.
not going to be an appropriate placement for her. She needed at least a break from this group of people, of peers, and maybe the school didn't have the level of support that she really needed at that time.
Right,
So we started to investigate some additional placements for her.
right.
So we got a list of like probably like 4 or 5. And then you and your husband
Mhm,
went to them in person.
right.
Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Well, everybody was lovely. The teachers were lovely. Everything, the people were lovely. It was in an office building. It was one room. This is what the public school suggested. My husband went in, I have to say, I didn't see it, but he told me, it was one room in an office building with cafeteria style seating. And then the other room was where the kids went when they had a nutty.
Yeah.
That was their suggestion.
So that
And
was not going to be a great option for us.
right. I mean, I can't say I don't know anything about the school. I mean, the people seem lovely, so I don't know anything about that. But my school actually had another suggestion. I work with a director of a woman
Out
gave
of
me a suggestion. Yeah. So
out of district placement coordinator.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we went there, and this place was absolutely wonderful.
And
Just
local.
local to our house, maybe 15 minutes away, and 4 different buildings. They have farm animals on site. They have, music. They have the kids get to walk around. They have a little I can't say the word milieu in the middle. If
Yeah.
they ever need a break, they can
Mhm.
get up and leave. I mean, the place is absolutely wonderful. I can't say enough about it. The music room, it's just very loving and just a really wonderful place. So we were like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
So,
And what was her transition like there?
so on the last day in public schools, she came home upset, crying that everybody made fun of her outfit. Was a pink champion shirt and pink pants, calling her a boy. And on the first day at this school, she came home overjoyed that everybody was giving her compliments and compliments about her outfit, and she was just so happy. It just made me feel so good. So
So
that
she
was
really didn't have any difficulty transitioning. She like was off and running from her first
no,
day. It was like a
nope,
miracle. It was like the right environment. She was feeling better. She was relieved to be out of the other environment, and she was loving the
right.
new environment.
Yeah, I mean, she was worried, leaving, but then when she got there, it was just, like you said, up and running, Once she got all the compliments, it was just, and having seen the difference between the 2 days, she was off and running. And, it's been nothing but positive ever since. This place is just wonderful. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what a difference.
And what a difference. I mean, she's just soaring.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah.
So all your hard work paid off. And
Right,
it was hard. It was
right,
expensive. It was hard. It was time consuming. You
right,
guys you made this like your second and third full-time jobs.
right. And she's ready to transition back at this point into some sort
Yeah.
of different school at this point.
Yeah.
She's made so much progress. She says she's probably not a public school because she's scorned from it, but she's looking at other schools. So she's almost back to how she used to be at this point. So, it's really a testament to everybody, to you, to everybody that's helped us.
Oh, thank you. Always my pleasure. Always, always.
Oh,
So another
yeah.
interesting fact about this case or, thing that we did, after we filed the state complaint, we
Uh-huh.
filed a federal complaint
Right.
because what she was experiencing was bullying as well as a violation of her civil rights based on gender identity and based on disability.
Right.
So that was an interesting process that a lot of people don't go through or don't experience. So, from your perspective, can you tell us what that was like?
Oh, I felt so vindicated. I mean, I felt so victimized the whole time and unheard and like steamrolled by everybody. And when you did that, I just felt so vindicated again, you know, even in a way like vindicated by what her friends did to her and by what the kids did to her, and I think in a way she felt vindicated, you know, for all the things that she said, oh, this person did this to me, and they said no, and people yelling in her face, and it was really validating for all the things that had happened to her, for someone to say, you know what, that's not right, and you
Yeah.
have to pay, you have
Yeah.
to pay, and this school has a knock on their record,
Yeah. And
you know?
like when you're going through it and you feel like you don't understand why this is happening to you, it feels really, really bad. And nobody is helping.
Right,
And then your parents can't help because they're not in charge of the situation. They're doing everything they can, but the people who could actually do something about it aren't helping. And I
right,
guess that's, why these agencies in a, very overly simplified way are there to to do this for people who need their help, to stand up and
Right.
say, you know, what you're doing is wrong. This is
Right.
discrimination on multiple levels.
Right. Right.
And you know, in this country, we don't stand for that kind of behavior.
Right.
And it's not that often that you get to, you know, talk to somebody at one of the federal offices about what's been happening, and for them to say, yeah, we'll take your case. This is
I
bad
know.
enough that we will take your case.
I know. I just, having gone through so long of, oh, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And then for it just finally to be recognized, it was just like such a relief. You know, it was almost like a dream. It happened, you know?
Yeah, they took the case.
Yeah.
Have you heard back from them
I haven't heard
recently?
back from them. No.
Well, it's the federal government, so
Right. I know.
it does take a little bit.
I know.
All right. Well, I mean, overall, with what she went through for like so many years, then what she
Right.
went through with her health,
Right.
then the lack of success at school, just that like
Right.
steep decline in her
Yeah.
functioning kind of
Yeah.
across the board, and then back up to
Yeah. Right.
almost like her previous typical functioning is
Yeah. Right.
so amazing, such a success story. You don't often
Right.
get, you know,
Right.
those kind of outcomes.
Right.
So
Oh, she has a job
amazing.
before her brother, who's a year older, and
Uh-oh.
and no disabilities. Yeah, she went
Good
out
for
on her
her.
own, got a job. She won a t-shirt contest,
Hmm.
as you know, for the how do I describe it?
Well,
Uh,
it was an artwork, right? Her
yeah.
artwork got put on the,
Yeah, so Pans and Pandas affects your handwriting, and she's always been a really good artist. So I remember at one time my mom said she noticed she was drawing stick figures. Like she's been like a phenomenal artist, like even as like a 5-year-old. For her to be drawing stick figures was really kind of upsetting. And so through this healing process, all of a sudden I asked her to enter. There was a contest, and she drew this beautiful drawing, and she won. And I'm pretty sure it was record setting because the woman who ran it told me she could have anything she wanted printed. She made her own specially designed sweatshirt, you know, different than the actual ones that were selling. It's going to be on the website indefinitely. And, you know, random strangers were reaching out to me from the Pans and Pandas Facebook sites and telling me how profound her stories were. It was really heartfelt and touching.
and it's a beautiful drawing. And
Yeah.
we can include a picture of it when we, you know, do the promotion for this.
Oh, that'd
So
be
everyone
good.
can see how great it is. And I
Yeah.
am literally wearing my sweatshirt right now. It's my
Yeah, I
favorite
keep looking
thing.
at it. Yeah, it's so
My
comfortable.
favorite thing.
Yeah.
It is so comfortable. And it's beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, you'd think it was like, how did she draw
Yeah.
this? You're like, oh my God, that's amazing.
She,
That looks computer generated. But I mean,
yeah,
I've seen the actual drawing itself. I mean, it is
yeah,
kind of computer aided, I think, at the end. But
yeah.
the actual drawing is maybe more beautiful, and they couldn't
She,
make it as beautiful.
right. I know. When you see the shading of the actual drawing, it's like more captivating than
Yeah.
that one. She did it literally. I kept pushing and pushing, pushing. She didn't want to do it. And then the night it was due, she literally did it in 10 minutes. It wasn't finished, but it was due. So she did it in 10 minutes. I told them, oh, you know, it's not finished. And they said, oh, that's okay. This is how we like it. And I think the element of being undone they liked,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's a hummingbird.
I mean, I would never know by looking at it if it wasn't done.
No, but I think they liked it because
Yeah,
it kind
it's
of
beautiful.
represented something. It
Yeah.
being undone kind of had purpose. And it's a
Yeah.
hummingbird with flowers for the girl's head. And I think it has meaning to what it stands for her.
Do you know what that means for her?
I think it has to do something of the unraveling or the raveling, something to the brain, you know, the hummingbird.
Sure.
I can't quite get it, but something to do, you know, because it's a
Okay.
brain disorder, you know.
Sure. Right. So how she kind of felt in her head, maybe how she feels now, which
Yeah.
if this is a drawing representative of how she feels in her head now, I would say she feels pretty good
Yeah. Right.
because
Yeah.
she did a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful drawing.
Yeah.
So what would you say as from one parent to other parents listening? What were your big takeaways from this whole experience?
So the one thing that was really hard through it all is that I didn't think we'd ever get her back. I thought we'd have a special needs daughter for the rest of my life, and that's what, as I had referenced, the depression and the heartache, and my husband and I having so much pain. You can get them back, and you will. They'll come back. You just can't give up. Don't give up. They'll come back. It's hard. It kind of rips you apart, but you'll get them back. They can come back. You just have to research, 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 research. Don't give up. Have faith,
Yeah, I think
and
that's
just
great advice.
right,
Don't quit in the middle.
right. Don't quit in the middle. It's hard, but hope is there.
Extremely hard.
Extremely
Life-changingly hard.
life-changingly hard, right.
But also life-changingly worth it.
Right, life-changingly worth it. What I thought was before is not now. What I thought was important at one time, I realize is not. Who I thought was important is not. People who came to help me and people who didn't. Now I know, who was there for me and who wasn't is like awakening,
Yeah. So far, I think everybody that I've interviewed, you are my fourth interview, I think. Every single parent has said the same thing.
Really.
And I feel honored to be part of people's teams, honestly,
Yeah.
because I think it's something that if you have the opportunity to help a family or a kid in a crisis, you should automatically you should do it. I
Right.
mean, you shouldn't hesitate. Because I mean, it's worth it.
And I'm honored to have met you, really. I mean,
Oh,
and I consider you a friend at this point, so.
I consider you a friend. And also, I was saying to another one of my friends, I said, is everybody going to think that I'm just like having my own personal friends on? And she's like, well, first of all, that's what everybody does with the podcast, even famous people. And I was
Right.
like, oh, good point. Good point. And she's also like, you have probably become friends with most of these people.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, the law,
Yeah.
I'm not a therapist. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not bound by, different types of boundaries that, different professions have. We've
Right.
obviously maintained professional relationships. But when you work with the family for, 1 to 5 to 7 to 10 years, you develop a relationship. There's lots of crossover. And, you introduce them to other families. You ask them to come on your new podcast. I mean,
Right.
there's, it's a new community and you're linked up with
Yeah.
lots of new communities because of all the research you did and everything you've been through.
Right, exactly. Right. It's a new level of trust that we've established between each other.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I was thinking of mentioning.
Please.
The most powerful thing I think that's been influenced in her life is we've enrolled her in something called brain retraining. I'm not sure. I don't know if you want to get into that, but
well, just tell us a little bit about it.
So my husband randomly happened upon it at it's a local chiropractor's office, but it's kind of a naturopath's chiropractor's office. He just happened to go in there, and they, as I said, they do something called brain retraining, and it is it's a combination of applied kinesiology and learning theory. It's the study of muscles and the science of testing, so they balance the brain and the body. So they try to reconnect damaged pathways for the brain. It sounds like hocus pocus.
Right. So a lot of people think it's like not real. But it is connected closely to lots of things that people know are very real.
Right.
So I think a lot of this stuff, that we talk about with kids and disabilities, neurodivergence, autism,
Yes.
PANDAS, the list goes on, are so neurologically based. And
Right.
we kind of, as a society, I think, are maybe in the infancy of understanding
Right.
how neurology works and how we fix some of these things. And so there's tons more research to be done. Hopefully they're doing, tons of it now, and they could always be doing more. But, brain retraining has been around for a really, really long time.
Right.
And like, side note, I broke my ankle and I've been in physical therapy. And when they ask me to move my ankle like to the right or left or point it down or flex it up, the picture of the way my ankle looks in my head from me using my brain to move my foot is not what my foot looks like.
Really?
If I was to if I shut my eyes and do the exercise, they're like, do you feel like your foot's turned like really inward? I'm like, yes. I open my eyes, my foot's like barely moved.
Oh, wow.
So those are pathways that, like, this is like, they're orthopedic surgeons and physical therapists who are very aware that this is happening. And then there's also, like, you could do your exercises, like I don't know what it's called exactly, but like you sit like half of, like, if you have an injury on one side, you sit with your non-injured side in a mirror. So you can only see the non-injured side and do the exercises, whatever you're supposed to be doing bilaterally, but you're only looking at the ones in the mirror. But eventually that's supposed to retrain the pathways.
Right.
So I think, we know that there is something to this.
Right.
But it takes such a long time for them to, like, scientifically prove that there has been benefit. But I don't know if that necessarily means that, if you have access to something that you think might help, you can afford it, you can access it, then try it. If there's no real harm, it's going to come from it. I don't want people like rushing out and spending like money that they don't have on something that might not work. But if it's a reasonable amount of money, you can invest a reasonably small amount of money into trying it, testing it. I think it's worth it. That's what you've done.
Right. This has had, everything has helped that I've mentioned, but this has probably had the most profound effect. And the woman is actually working with me the most, because she says that I kind of have the most effect on the family. So the family dichotomy. So now she's kind of moved on from Emily to me.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I think this whole thing happened and I'm like, and I have all this anxiety because I'm not going to let it happen again, and now I have this big cloud. And so
I don't know if you have a big cloud.
Well, a cloud of
that's a fair way of describing it.
Maybe a cloud of it's never going to happen again. So,
or hypervigilance.
Yeah, Emily, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you in a flare? Are you okay? And yeah, there's a little more to it, but
yeah.
So now, she works with you, and she leaves, and you're just like completely relieved. There's a lot more to it, but it's just.
What would be like
really
an example of like a thing that you might do with her? Like exercises? Is it like, what do you do exactly?
It's really hard to describe. And I actually talked to a woman who I had described her to, and now she's actually working with. And she said, I understand what you meant when you said you can't describe it. It just works. You go in a room and you lie on a table, and this is how it's generally done. And she kind of does stuff above you, and you don't really know what she's doing. I can't even really describe it.
Is it like Reiki?
It's like Reiki, yeah. It's similar to that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
I love Reiki. I think that with Reiki, everyone's like, but does it work? I'm like, well, first of all, I think it might, but also it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. It's in a
doctor's
good
afterwards,
office.
And you're kind of like rested and feel like you've been in a meditative state for like 30, 45 minutes, however long you're in there for. So, the worst that can happen is that.
Right. I can tell you this works. I can tell you it works.
That's interesting. Okay, so before we break, any things that you think we should have touched upon that we didn't get a chance to?
I don't think so. I think that was everything.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to Laugh, Cry, IEP with Victoria Crisp. We hope it has given you inspiration and a sense that you are not alone. In fact, we'd love to have you join the Laugh, Cry, IEP community on Facebook. It's a free group for moms like you. You can also learn how to work with Victoria in the group or on her website, crispeducationadvising.com. Both links are in the show notes for you. Until next time, please share the show with your friends or anyone you think may need this message. And remember, we are always on your side.